I'm Krishnavi Roy, and I will be interviewing Ms. Thuraya Al Baqsami for my Title 7 project, Trailblazers Transcending Traditions. Kuwaiti artist Thuraya Al Baqsami is one of the Gulf's pioneering contemporary artists and writers. She lived through the 1990 to 1991 Iraqi invasion of Kuwait, which had a lasting impact on her work. Working as a printmaker and painter, her practice has evolved over the years, showing an aptitude for writing and the art from childhood. Al Baqsami began exhibiting her works as a teenager in the 1960s. She studied fine arts in Cairo and later earned a master's degree in illustration at the Shurooq Institute in Moscow. Al Baqsami has exhibited internationally and was awarded the Kuwait State Prize for her book Seller Candle, 1993, about her experiences during the Gulf War. So, ma'am, how did your educational journey in fine arts across different countries shape your artistic style and perspective?
I study art, high school to study art in Cairo, and I stayed there nearly 3 years and a half. Then suddenly I meet my husband, and I get married, and I moved to Moscow. In Moscow, 7 years. I start from the beginning. I study printmaking, graphic, and painting. It was a very good place to study, like, Surikov. It is one of the best art faculty and college in England, and I managed, discover many good stuff inside of me, my ability, and it was a great place to study there. And when I graduate, I moved to Senegal, Africa, where my husband, he was diplomat there, and I knew this is my studying journey.
Okay, okay. Could you share a pivotal moment or experience that significantly influenced your creative direction? Important moment.
Important moment or only in my studying journey? In all my life or only on my studying journey? Okay. Students, it was or in Egypt, it was a big number of students, and as a person, I was very happy to live there. It's a great place to live. As a student, I said anything to me. In Moscow, it was a big competition. It was hard, first because of the weather, which I'm not used to it, to live 40 below zero. Yes, and also the level who was studying with me, the Russian, it was very high, and it was a big competition. But I managed to pass, and I graduate with excellent mark. I don't know how I study Russian language. This was the difficulty first year, but it was fun that I wrote a book about it. I'm a writer. I published 15 books, different in short story, novel, poem. I was 40 years journalist. I work, and all this stuff inside of me as a writer, illustrator, painter, printmaker. They was linking one to each other, and this gave me a good feeling. Yes, for this I wrote a book. It's called The Time of Red Flute, and it is about first year I study in Moscow and how it was difficult, and also I publish many short story about my life. But important moment in my life, it was the invasion. When Iraqi army, they invade Kuwait, and my husband was for 3 months only. But that time to do it, I also my at that time, and I discover art is the shield war situation. If you still in a safe, always women, she inspire me, women's word, women's life, especially Arab women, Oriental women. This has inspired me a lot in my poem, in my painting, in my a lot of artwork, and she was the main subject in my all artwork all these years. Even you found her in my literature, because I think woman, she's a symbol of beauty, maternity, and she have a lot of symbols in her. I mean, in her existing, and also she's the most beautiful things in the earth. Yes, and also as I am a mother, and the mother generally also, she's a symbol of country, of people, of many things. For this, also what inspired me again, this is the place where I exist or where I live. It affects a lot in my artwork, and also I think I'm like a sponge inside of me, then I take it out in an art form.
Okay, okay. Um, how did the Iraqi invasion of Kuwait impact your artistic expression and themes you explored in your work? How does your experience during the occupation influence your creative process?
Yes, during the wartime, I discovered that to be under occupation, it is very dangerous to paint the real feeling, or to write about the real feeling. Then I use symbols, and in symbols I found a lot of stuff which is, I mean, it is effect on my work, and I used them. They saved me a lot. For example, I do the enemy. They look like scorpion, and the symbol of my country, it was deer, beautiful deer, and I developed images, which is even Iraqi soldiers. They was in my studio and they didn't understand what I want to say. After the liberation of Kuwait, I stopped to paint beautiful women and beautiful scene, and for 10 years it was very dark, and this is not normal for any nation go through occupation or wartime. Always the artists after this experience, they have too much trauma inside of themselves, and they express it in very dark way. Then I get rid of it after time.
Okay, okay. Please tell us about your prolific series Invasion 1990 to 1991. How well was it received?
The series I done during the, I mean, during the, I told you, during the invasion, my work, it was all symbolic. Then it wasn't clear what I want to say. It is, I use a very historical symbols. I put them in my artwork. Nobody understand what I want to say, but I was scared, because any truth moment in my art, I can face death with it. Then after the liberation, when I feel the freedom and I was happy my country free, I start to tell the real story and what happened through my artwork. For this, you can see two kind of artwork: 90 to middle of 91 until February 91. His mouth full of mud and blood, and he just tried to show his feeling in a very mysterious way to protect himself and his family and loved people. But after the liberation, I could shout, I could show what happened in my country. I should talk about the peace, which is good things to get it when you're living and you live here. All these things, in 91, both artwork, which I done in 90 until 91, I put them in exhibition and I go around the world. I show them in everywhere, even in Paris, it was exhibition. In 94, it was in India, it was in Afghanistan, it was in Vietnam, in China, in many, many countries in the world. I just want to show them what happened in Kuwait through my art.
Okay. Okay. Can you highlight specific artworks that stands out in portraying the impact of war, such as the last shot in 1991?
Yes, yes. The one of my icons work, I can tell it. This is a lino artwork called No for Invasion. This is very small print, which I done it in a purpose to be underground poster to give to the resistance, that they can put it all over Kuwait, that the people can see, that the soldiers, they can see that we are not happy that they are in our country. But I just print 10 copy from it, and I give people to just to get young people to spread it. But they was arrested and they shoot them, they killed them, and I stopped the project and I hide the block of the print in somewhere safe. And after the liberation of Kuwait, I printed, and this work was shown in MoMA Museum. It is a collection with a very big museum in the world, and I have now only my own copy. I mean, this work, which I think it is very important for me, and it's a symbol, but it's showing uh, how you are you can resist in your own way, even through your art.
Mm-hmm. I liked your last line. You can resist your own way even through art. Very nice.
Through your artworks.
Yes. Um, I also found the parting very haunting. The painting depicts a woman nestling her head on wounded man's shoulder. The two bullet holes
Yes,
appear
yes.
on the head of the man, as well as the dove in flight above. The two figures loving embrace. What does the painting signify to you?
Uh, this painting. It have a story. I was in February. It was not. Yes, it was in February 20. We liberated 26. Yes, 26th of February.
Yeah.
Yes, 21st of February. I make sketch. This is a woman with a man, and she look very sad, and there is a small bird. And my husband here asked me, Thuraya, what's this? What will go? Why are you doing this strange drawing? I said, because the time we live is strange. We don't know tomorrow we will wake up, we are dead, we are under a ruined house, or we are alive, or we are prisoner in Iraq. We don't know what will happen. Yes, this is the situation of any a person living in an occupation country. He don't know what we will face. Full of life of scary surprise. And what happened that um, uh, uh, I do this small drawing. Then next day, my husband was war prisoner in Iraq. They took him from the house. They kidnapped him, and they took him to Iraq. And I keep the sketch after the liberation of Kuwait. I mean, after my husband, he came back from prisoner. I went to London. My family was there, and I managed to do this work in etching. The technique was etching. and it became beautiful, but still it's very sad and full of memories. This is the story of this art.
Okay. In fact, there's a movie, it's an Indian movie which came out called Airlift, which was about the Iraqi occupation of Kuwait and how the Kuwaitis were being killed and how some Indians were able to fly back and escape from Iraqi occupation. So
Yes,
it's
yes,
quite
yes.
interesting.
You know, because the biggest population, second population in Kuwait, it's the Indian.
Yeah,
They are the biggest, the biggest. For this, you can imagine all these people have to leave the country. They face a lot of tragedy.
yeah,
You know, it was a big tragedy.
yeah, definitely. We know a few people who were there during that time as well and who are still
Yes,
living in Kuwait. So it was a traumatic period. So
yes,
that brings me to my next question. The traumatic
yes,
event of the invasion resulted in cellar candles, in which you expressed your experience through poetic fiction. You received the
yes.
state prize for this. Which creative part of you was more active during this time? And was writing more therapeutic than painting during this period?
Yes, yes, you are right. The this during this period, the writing was the scary things because the soldiers non-stop they check in our houses, they check every paper, anything, because they was looking for underground brochures, you know, underground flyers, which is my husband was part of resistance, and also I wrote in these flyers. We give them around Kuwait. We give them for the people. We let them to get to the hand of Iraqi soldiers to read it, to feel, to know what we are feel about them. For this writing, it was very danger. And painting for me, it was less danger because I managed to, like, you know, I use symbols. That I nothing showing that I am against them. But writing, I couldn't use symbols, you know, to look very stupid what happened. And the scary moment was my children. I have two daughters who they like to paint, and these children they couldn't hide their feeling, and they was drawing what they feel. They done soldiers like monkeys, like donkeys. They put horn for them, tail. You know, they make them look like devils. You know, and they show that Kuwaiti are stronger. They fighting. These children, you know, one she was 9, the other was 7, and they show themselves that what they feel. For this children, they can't hide their feeling, but adults they can do some. They can be a good actress or actor, you know, to act. For this, I mean, writing was danger, yeah, and but I mean, painting was less danger. And I wrote another two book, one of them for children. It's called Memory of Fatuma, young Kuwaiti. It's a girl, 9 years old. She's writing her diary during wartime. And this book was translated to Persian language. And I get award for children book creativity on this book.
Okay, okay, okay. In what way does the art produced during and after the Gulf War contribute to the collective memory of Kuwait and serve as a means of addressing historical trauma? What role does art play in preserving historical narratives?
The art always, you know, as I told you, it's a clear mirror for any period, you know. If wasn't art, we didn't know how the people before 2000 years they live, and all this civilization. It was not written a book. It was written through all this great artwork, which is start from thousand years, from the cave until the pyramid, until the temples, until all this. You know, for this art, it's the best style to bring to show the style life. But now we have competed with technology. which is this is the internet and all this media, which they are art. I'm against them. I don't like them. Yes, they make my life easier to contact, but as a art, it is little bit difficult to artists to live in this atmosphere.
In fact, in my I'm doing a double degree. So in this year, September, I did a paper with another person on is AI art, which is artificial intelligence generated art, considered to be real artwork. So for that, we interviewed a lot of people who were AI artists, which means artificial intelligence using machines, technology, creating art, and normal artists like you who don't use AI in their art. And
No, I don't.
yeah, exactly. So we assessed that does AI actually help in the artistic process? There were variety of answers where some people said that AI does help, but then some people also said that, but that's not real art. So it's open to debate. Everyone has their own view.
Yes, I am as a old generation. I was born 1951. Okay, I'm now 72 years old. I don't think I have any interest to use computer in my artwork.
Yeah.
I still like my brushes and colors and canvas and my studio and put music and to jump in front of my painting when it's done the way I like it, or to dance for it. I'm a person, I like to live with my material, buttons and screen to share me this feeling.
Yes. Yes. So my last question to you is, do you see your work on invasion and occupation as a means of fostering understanding and preventing repetition of history, particularly in context of conflicts and occupation?
My work, it is the peace language, it is everywhere the same. But the situation where you need this peace is different. But it's always, I feel that war, war effect. This is what my philosophy. War effect. It is just where we have factory. They produce weapons, okay, arm, and they need supermarket to sell these arms. And when they invent war, any place in this world, this is the open supermarket for their products. Even when what happened in Kuwait, yes, it's give me this feeling that we are was a victim who somebody think to do a war to let another people to sell their products. Yes, and you see, politic, it is in this time, it is a very, very dirty effect. And the war is dirty effect. And it's always, you see, it's never peace in the world, never. Finish one place, another, start in another, finish in that place, start another, non-stop. Because these factories, if they was selling lipstick, then there will be no war. But they selling tanks and arms. And for this peace through art, okay, through a lot of artwork, you can talk and you can tell what you feel, and it is effect on the people. It is, you can't say it don't affect. Like you can, the biggest example, Guernica for Picasso. It was nearly abstract, and it is a great work. And until now, it is showing how it is. I mean, how the war is ugly, how the genocide is ugly, how killing innocent people just to sell a tank and plane and arms. It's an ugly fact.
Mhm. Mhm. Okay, perfect. So that's a wrap. Thank you so very much for the interview. It was very insightful to hear so many things from you about the war and Kuwait and your works. It was very insightful. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
You graduated from Helwan University in Egypt. How has your academic background influenced your artistic style and approach?
في الكلية في تعليم للأساسيات. فعندما لما تكون أنت متعلم صح لأساس الفن، راح يصير سهل عليك أنك أنت بعد التخرج، لأن في الكلية أنت لازم تدرس نفس ما يطلب منك الدكتور حتى تكون تنفذ صح. بعد ما تتخرج يبتدي عندك هاي المعلومات تعطيك فرصة أن أنت توجد لك أسلوبك الخاص، أو يظهر معك تكتشف أسلوبك الخاص من خلال الأساس اللي أنت تعلمته بالكلية.
Thank you for your answer. Could you shed light on your experiences exhibiting internationally in Asia, Europe, and the Middle East? How has these diverse cultural exposures impacted your artistic evolution?
أكيد المشاركات الخارجية مع التقاء مع ثقافات مختلفة، التقاء مع تجارب مختلفة، طافت لي نضج فكري ونضج فني. يعني اطلاع على خامات مختلفة، اطلاع على بلتات مختلفة، اطلاع على أفكار، فلسفات، هذه كلها تخلي الفنان تزيد عنده عملية النضج والفكر والرؤية الفنية.
Thank you. Thank you. The exhibition in Paris, along with other renowned Kuwaiti artists, showcased your work on an international platform. How did your experience shape your perspective on your art?
كانت التجربة بباريس يعني تجربة فريدة، لأنها كانت في المعهد العربي. المعهد العربي هذا صرح ثقافي فني، فالجمهور اللي يحضر أو يكون في هذا المعهد من الزائرين يكونوا كلهم لهم ذائقة فنية وثقافية. فلما عرضنا في المعهد كان مجموعة كبيرة من الجمهور أعجبوا في العمل اللي أنا كنت عارضته وخذ يعني صدى. فهذا طبعا يزيدني ثقة بنفسي، ثقة بعملي، ثقة بتجربتي إنها تكون إن هي مميزة، وميزتني في هذا الجزء من الفن. فهذا طبعا أعطاني مسؤولية أكثر إني أنا أأكد على الأسلوب اللي أعطاني ميزة وأشتغل عليه أكثر وأطور. لأن الجمهور اللي حضر عنده التذوق الفني، فطبعا لما يشير حق العمل أو إنه ياخذ ويعطي ويتحاور معاي على العمل أو إنه يعجب بالعمل، هذا طبعا يعطيني ثقة وأنه أنا وصلت درجة من النجاح.
Perfect. Thank you. Your art seems to touch on societal themes and personal reflection. How do you navigate the balance between addressing broader societal issues and expressing personal narratives in your artwork?
يعني أنا مؤمنة أنه إذا أنا في شيء أنا مقتنعة فيه وبحياتي راح أطبقه في حياتي الاجتماعية، فأي فكرة أنا مؤمنة فيها راح أترجمها على العمل، لأن هذه الفكرة أنا راح أطبقها في حياتي المجتمعية. فلازم يصير في اتزان، يعني الفنان ما يرسم أفكار هو لا يعمل بها أو لا يطبقها أو غير مؤمن فيها صورة حقيقية. فلازم الفنان الفكر اللي هو يترجمه على اللوحة يكون هو مؤمن فيه ويمارسه خارج نطاق اللوحة في حياته الخاصة، في حياته المجتمعية. فدائما يكون في هذا الاتزان. فالواحد لازم يحرص على أنه تكون أفكاره هي من المحيط اللي حواليه والأحداث اللي تحاوطه والأحداث اللي يعيشها، ويكون رأيه فيها بكل شفافية وكل صدق. هني يكون في التوازن المقنع للمتلقي أو للجمهور.
Thank you. Your exhibition titled Kursi features an intriguing artistic interpretation of the game of musical chairs. How did you come to associate this childhood game with the themes of power and oppression in your art?
أنا لفت نظري أنه لعبة الكرسي قرأتها أنه عند الشعب الياباني هي تعطي المعنى العكس، معنى هو معنى الفريق، بعكس باقي الشعوب لعبة الكرسي هي الفرد. فهذه اللعبة على بساطتها وكثر ما هي الأطفال يحبونها، بس هي تعطي فكر للسلطة، لأن الطفل يلعب عشان يخسر الفريق اللي هو يلعب معه ويفوز عليه ويأخذ الكرسي ويخرجون هم برا مو الكراسي، فيظل فرد واحد وكرسي واحد. فهذه الفكرة عند الأطفال لما يكون ما في عنده تربية سوية، ممكن تنمي عنده حب السلطة، إنه يفوز على أقرانه وعلى أصحابه ويكون مستمتع بالفوز ومنتصر، وإنه هو ظل هو القائد أو المسيطر. لكن باليابان عكس تماما هذه اللعبة، إنه كل الفريق يلعب عشان يخرج كرسي، فبنهاية اللعبة الفريق موجود وفي كرسي واحد. فمفهوم الفريق، مفهوم التعاون، مفهوم الجماعة. فهذه الفكرة لفتت نظري إنه شلون هذه اللعبة إنه ممكن تنمي عندنا أو عند أطفالنا حب السيطرة والتملك. فمنها بديت أبني أفكاري معرض الكرسي. وممكن يكون هذا المتسلط إذا هذا الطفل إذا عاش في بيئة غير سوية، ممكن يكون مع العمر يكون دكتاتوري، يكون متسلط، يكون متحكم في كل مجال. مثلا ممكن سلطة سياسية، ممكن سلطة مجتمعية، سلطة فردية، هي السلطة بكل معانيها يعني. وأنا ما أقصد فقط السلطة السياسية، هي يمكن الفكرة الأساسية في المعرض أنه السلطة السياسية، أن هي إذا كانت مسيطرة تستمتع في اضطهاد شعبها، لكن كرمز رمز للسلطة، هو الرمز هذا ممكن نعيشه في كل أطياف المجتمع، ممكن في الأسرة، ممكن في المجتمع، ممكن في الحياة الإدارية. فهذا حتى بين الأطفال، مجاميع الأطفال، حب السيطرة إحنا اللي قاعدين نبنيه في أطفالنا وننميه. فلازم نعيد صياغة ألعاب الأطفال من أول وجديد، على أساس نشوف شنو الألعاب اللي هي تنمي روح الفريق، تنمي روح الجماعة، ونبتعد عن هذه الألعاب اللي هي تنمي حب السيطرة.
Perfect. Thank you very much. The concept of the chair becomes a sophisticated symbol for you. How did you relate this symbol to the role of women in society? Is this association applicable only to Arab women or to women in general?
لكل النساء، يعني لكل النساء في العالم، أنه في سيطرة عليهم، في سيطرة ذكورية، ففي سيطرة رب عمل. يعني يمكن احنا في الشرق سيطرة المرأة سيطرة اجتماعية مجتمعية، سيطرة أب، سيطرة زوج، سيطرة أخ، تقاليد، عادات، يعني نوعا ما. في الوقت الحالي يمكن شوي تغير الحال يعني، بس في شوية سيطرة. لكن في الدول الغرب، دول التحرر، ممكن نقول سيطرة رب العمل، سيطرة الحاجة للمال، يعني المرأة في المجتمعات الغربية معتمدة على حياتها الخاصة في أنها هي تصرف على حالها، فممكن تكون هي عندها سيطرة حاجتها المال تسيطر عليها، فممكن أنها هي تقبل بأي عمل عشان تحرر نفسها من هذه السيطرة. فهي السيطرة في كل المجتمعات بس تاخذ صور مختلفة.
Thank you. Could you tell us something more about the gradual fading of bright colors to bleaker ones in your painting, reflecting those in power and those oppressed?
أنا دائما أستخدم الألوان الحمراء أو الألوان الحارة في الأعمال، مع هارموني مع الألوان الزرقاء اللي هي تهدي مجموعة اللون الأزرق. أنا أحس إن اللون الأحمر يعطيني أنا طاقة وباور عشان أشتغل، فأحب أشتغل بالأحمر أول لون أشتغل فيه، وبعد ذلك أبتدي أبني عليه باقي الألوان. بس يعني ممكن يعطيني معاني ثانية في معارضي. يعني في معرض الكرسي خليت السلطة لون زاهي، والناس أو الجهة المضطهدة باللون الرماديات، فهي لون الدب الميتة، والحياة منتهية منها لأنه في سيطرة عليها، في ضغوط عليها. لكن السلطة أعطيتها الألوان الزاهية معنى أنها هي فرحانة أو سعيدة بإحساسها بالسيطرة على المجموعة الثانية. فاللون هذا يعطيها الفرح، يعطيها الزهو، يعطيها السعادة، إنها هي قادرة تسيطر وقادرة تتحكم وقادرة إنها هي تخليها في القناة اللي هي مواجهتها لها. والطرف الثاني خذ الألوان الرماديات اللي هي مسحوب منها لون الحياة أو اللون وأعطاها لون الكآبة.
Looking forward, what messages or themes do you think your art will continue to explore and convey?
أنا دائما يعني دائما عندي أفكار تكون تخص المجتمع عامة يعني. فإحنا الحين في العالم كشعوب قاعدين نفقد الهوية، هويتنا ما محددة بالزمانات أو بالوقت السابق. كنا نعرف إنه هذه المجموعة، هذه الثقافة ثقافة عربية، ثقافة أجنبية، ثقافة هندية، ثقافة يابانية، ثقافة صينية. لكن في الوقت الحالي كل الثقافات اختلطت في بعض وصرنا ما في تحديد. نجي على العربي ما نشوف عربي، نروح على الياباني اختلف، نروح على الهندي مثلا اختلف، نروح على أي أحد أي بلد أي ثقافة، كلنا عندنا النمط الأمريكي، النمط الأجنبي هو النمط الوحيد اللي احنا كلنا متجهين له في شكلنا، في كلامنا، في تصرفاتنا، في تنظيم حياتنا. فقدنا هويتنا. يعني بالوطن العربي فقدنا اللغة العربية، الأغلبية تستخدم اللغة الأجنبية. يعني هاي اللغة ميزتنا احنا كالعرب. أزياءنا اختلفت، شكلنا اختلف، نتجه إلى الغرب أكثر. يعني لو نشوف أي دولة الحين احنا ندخل على أي عالم أي ثقافة نشوف كلهم الأجيال الحالية كلها مبتعدة عن ثقافتها وهويتها. فأنا هواي قاعد يشغل فكري إنه إحنا لازم نعيد صياغة هويتنا مرة ثانية مع الجو الحاضر، مع الجو المتطور، مع هذه الأجواء. ما نترك حالنا إن إحنا نصير نسخ أمريكية، نسخ أجنبية. إحنا نسخ عندنا ثقافة، فلازم نصير عندنا ثقافتنا تميزنا. فأنا وايد قاعد يشغل بالي إن في مواضيع الجاية، في معارض الجاية إن شاء الله، معرض الجاي راح يكون هذا الشيء.
I'm Krishnaveer Roy, and I will be interviewing Kuwaiti artist Lina Hijazi for my Title VII project, Trailblazers Transcending Traditions. A little bit about Lina. Lina Hijazi is a young Kuwaiti visual artist with several solo and group local and international exhibitions to her credit. Lina paints bright, bold, and dynamic canvases. Most of her work reflects happiness and positivism. Recently, Lina was invited by UNHCR to be a part of their refugee education and displacement project. So, Lina ma'am, thank you so much for being a part of this project. Can I ask you a few questions, please?
Sure. Thank you. Thank you so much. Sure. Thank you for the beautiful introduction.
Thank you. You have a background in psychology and philosophy. How do these academic disciplines intersect with your creative processes?
Psychology, that was my, I wanted to study art, but then, you know, at that time, the family didn't accept people to study art. It doesn't pay. So I had to study psychology and philosophy. In psychology, you know, it made me express myself more and understand more of more.
Okay. So it's very similar to India as well, wherein.
Excuse me?
It's very similar to India as well, wherein people don't want their children to study arts, and they want their children to study other pursuits.
Yes, yes.
So it's very similar to the Indian system as well.
Yes.
Thank you for answering. You've been part of numerous.
Psychology also.
Yeah. Please go on.
Makes me happy, like understand psychology makes me happier to produce happy paintings.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like I know how to deal with my emotions and my, you know what I mean? Oh.
Yeah. It helps you to express yourself better.
Yes.
Yeah.
It helps to express myself better.
Yes. You've been part of numerous exhibitions across different countries. How has this exposure to diverse cultures influenced the themes and techniques reflected in your artwork?
Traveling to different countries makes you more inspired. It gets you inspired, and you learn about the culture of other countries. You get to see other artists' work and artists, and you get to learn more from being abroad.
Mm-hmm.
And it gives you a self-confidence to produce and get inspired more.
I understand. Thank you. Being involved in UNHCR's refugee education and displacement project is significant. How do you believe art can contribute to reshape narratives and empowering individuals in such challenging contexts? How can exhibitions like this influence societal narratives?
I'm working with UNHCR as a donor, and I think art has to be always a part of helping people. And I did this exhibition. I talked to 23 artists, Kuwaiti artists, and we did this charity exhibition that all the money will go to refugees. Like we taught Syrian refugees that they lived in Lebanon and Jordan, and all the paintings got sold. And I'm so honored that I got to help people to 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 go to universities, to schools. We did that, and I think art can be helpful in all charity events. I can do. I have lots to offer.
Is there a specific event or showcase that significantly influenced your artistic direction among the various achievements and exhibitions you participated in?
There was several ones, but the one really that was really a big thing for me is when I exhibited it in Cap Gallery, Kuwait, and it boosted my my career.
Did your career?
And there's another one that I did, yeah. And then there's another one in Dar Hamad. I exhibited Dar Hamad is a very well-known art place. It was also that good. It made like all my art was there for 6 months, and I for people from that place.
Okay.
So many people knew me for that place. That those two, they boosted my career. They made me more famous. The people saw what I do. They appreciated it and they loved it.
Okay, that's great. Perfect.
And of course, the traveling thing. And there's also one more thing. When I opened Lina's Art Cafe, I had an art cafe that helped too. I had an art cafe for 3 years, and that one helped too. Like everybody was visiting, artists were visiting this cafe, and lots of people used to come, artists used to come and paint. I used to exhibit my art in that cafe too.
Okay.
In my own cafe.
Okay.
And it was a very well-known place.
Okay. So that brings me to our next question. Your involvement in charity events such as the London event for disadvantaged children's education is commendable. As a member of the Syndicate of Artists and Media in Kuwait, how has this affiliation contributed to your growth as an artist?
As a Kuwaiti artist, you have to be a member of an organization. I was a member before that in Land of Art in Denmark, but I really wanted to be a part in my country and a member of the syndicate. So it boosted me. It gave me more self-confidence, and it made me represent Kuwait more in a professional way out of Kuwait.
Okay. Running Lina's Art Cafe for 3 years must have been an enriching experience. How did it impact your perspectives on art and local art scene in Kuwait?
Lina's Art Cafe was found by me, and it helped me a lot. And I got to meet so many artists, and it was very successful. I had so many events. I used to train there. I used to teach art. I used to do events for kids and elderly people, and I used to do also like one day for kids, one day for artists. Lots of artists used to gather there, and I used to hang when I used to do it. It was like a small gallery. Whenever I finished I used to exhibit my paintings there, and I used to exhibit other artists' paintings there too. And of course, it helped a lot, and it made me like meet lots of new people from abroad too. We used to have lots of visitors from Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Qatar, outside like Europe, visitors from Europe, from the States, all over. And also I had some ads were done in Lina's Art Cafe.
Okay. And what kind of artistic legacy do you want to leave behind?
I want to be remembered by Like, I want to be remembered. I want to work harder to be remembered as an artist. And I would like to have my work in every house. And so far, I'm doing so well.
Best of luck. Best of luck. I hope it works out very well.
Thank you.
And
Thank
thank
you.
you. This was I'm Krishnavir Roy, and I have with me Aseel Yaqoub, who I will be interviewing for my Title VII project, Trailblazers Transcending Traditions. I would like to thank Aseel for being a part of this project. Aseel Al Yaqoub is a research-based interdisciplinary artist, award-winning artist who explores her Kuwaiti identity and her country's complex history through socially engaged art. Her academic approach towards art spans various fields such as history, architecture, and cultural sociology. Aseel believes in producing art that asks questions and creates opportunities for dialogue and self-reflection. She has an MFA from Pratt Institute in New York and a BA from Chelsea College of Art in London. She has participated in exhibitions worldwide, including 17th Venice Architecture Biennale, the 17th Venice Architecture Biennale, the 3rd Karachi Biennale, and 24th Dobrova Biennale, and the Jameel Art Center. Her work and essays are included in several notable publications, and I'm so happy that she made the time for me. So what influenced your decision to pursue art after studying architecture?
Well, because of I think the fact that, I've always wanted to pursue art. It was something that I felt deeply connected to ever since I was very young. And due to the decisions that were made in the early 2000s, in order for me to have a really solid career, and I think we have this also in the global South. It's very often that you either have to be an engineer or a lawyer or a doctor. It's something that's like a reputable pursuit, especially since I did really well in high school. So it's like, well, I shouldn't just do art, and art's something that was perceived as a hobby or a side gig. It wasn't really something that was considered a career. So after practicing architecture for a few years, trying to make sure that this isn't something that I really want to do, from working at boutique firms to working to larger companies, to then establishing sort of my own practice, designing a few things here and there, came to the realization that it doesn't really bring me as much joy as the artistic endeavors that I was pursuing in tangent, the exhibitions that I was doing here and there, the residencies. And so in 2013, I made the decision to, after practicing for 4 years, that this is something that I want to pursue.
I understand that because it's really common in places like South Asia as well, wherein if you want to pursue something which is not like engineering or medicine or accounting, I mean, you're not taken seriously. I mean, there's certain pursuits which you can do, and if you are in music or art, I mean, it's more challenging. Parents generally, I feel, do not want to support something wherein they don't know what will be the final outcome. It's not very steady. So I kind of relate to that. Yes. You spent time working in the West, but then you found yourself consistently pigeonholed as a female Arab artist in the diaspora. I read that prompted you to get back home. Why was that a problem? Weren't you breaking stereotypes that the West holds? Did you feel limited in any way?
So yeah, I mean, being an artist abroad and then being an Arab female artist is something that was, I was being categorized into exhibitions that under the titles or subheadings of an Arab female artist. or, you know, othered as sort of the more interesting, exotic group of, you know, artists that are coming and residing in these Western countries. And I think there became a lot of instances where I got really tired of, you know, explaining the context of Kuwait, since my work is very much revolved around identity, is that what is Kuwait? So rather than me having to, you know, like just present the work, I have to present the context of my work. I have to present the context of myself. I have to answer questions such as like, is Kuwait like Saudi Arabia or Iran? What sets it apart? Do you dress like this in Kuwait? Do you talk like this in Kuwait? You know, and so it just becomes less about the work and more about the fascination of me as an artist in relation to other artists and the art scene there. And then there's also obviously the way in which we're orientalized, and that's what I mean by pigeonholed. It's like the idea of like, well, I've started to feel that if I'm going to be talking about Kuwait, my audience should be from Kuwait, or it should be at least a regional audience that can comprehend what I'm trying to say. Because most of the time, like you mentioned earlier, I'm asking questions, and the questions that I'm asking shouldn't be directed at the biggest criticism that I showcase a lot in my work, which is, you know, the colonial influences and impacts on Kuwait that are very, very subtle, but profoundly impact sort of what our identity means and who we think we are. And this brings questions to traditions and what are traditions versus what is culture. And so it's like, well, but rather than taking this top-down approach, which is a very also Western lens of, let me look at Kuwait from a distance and analyze it from here, is I need to analyze Kuwait and be a part of Kuwait and be part of the society and be part of the contemporary as well as the historic aspect of it, which is why I came back. But that doesn't prevent me from, you know, presenting my work here and then being able to then present it abroad, because then that creates, you know, a discourse between two different countries. But at least let's have that discourse here locally. And I found that the local is definitely more vital, more important in my work.
Okay. You went to Britain as a 17-year-old to study architecture. You came back after 6 years. Was there a culture shock in any way that you felt?
I mean, yeah, there was. Well, firstly, just to give you more context, I graduated from the New English School in Kuwait. Before that, I was in the English School Kuwait. So most of my, you know, education was centered around very British. It was a British system, basically. And so the next step was to go to London, and that made sense, you know, since I was so used to the British education system. And you know, I admit this in a lot of my interviews where I was like speaking, thinking, dreaming in English, and Arabic. My Arabic was pretty weak. Could talk, you know, colloquially, you know, dialect-wise, but you know, barely read any Arabic, barely communicated in Arabic. And so when I came back, you know, a lot of projects stemmed out of this idea of like, who am I and where do I fit in? So one of these projects was the Year of Teddy, which was a blog that I started. Basically, when I came back, I didn't know what to do in Kuwait, where to go, you know, from having this independence in London to coming back here and having very little, you know, spontaneous occasions to attend. It was like, well, what do people do here? And so blogging at the time was before internet, before Instagram, before all of that, TikTok and stuff, was the thing that everyone would reference and look at for events, occasions, new openings for restaurants, etc. And so I decided to create my own blog where I would take this teddy bear, since I saw that it was a redundancy in the events that were being displayed. And I was like, everyone's going to the same places, but there must be more to just this whole idea of, you know, commercial F&B, you know, collective vibe. So the bear, I would document a picture a day or a video a day or something a day. And I would just post one photo or one blog post with a short caption. And it was basically me taking this bear to different parts of Kuwait, whether it's Jalib Shurooq, whether it's in various neighborhoods, whether it's him participating with, like on a boat with local fishermen, you know? So it was like he forced me to go out, or I forced myself to go out through it. And that's when I started to meet a lot of different parts of the Kuwaiti society, whether they were expats, whether they were people that I would have never otherwise gotten to meet, you know? And so it's created a really interested facet of circles for me. And then from there, I also realized, I'm called the chicken nugget. And I don't know if you've ever heard this expression. I think in India you have coconut, which is, we're brown on the outside, white on the inside.
Yeah.
So it's a derogative term, but sort of like this idea of reclaiming that term, and so creating work out of that as well. So I created something called the Chicken Nugget Alliance, which revolved around that theme. And from there, the integration became a bit more. It became easier,
Yeah. What initially sparked your interest in delving into Kuwait's past through art? Why did you explore the concept of national identity through your artworks? What are some of the main influences or inspirations behind your art practice?
Okay, so to try to understand what my art practice is, it was like the biggest challenge during my MFA. It's like you have to graduate with a master's thesis, and this thesis show is sort of like it's supposed to encompass what it is that your practice is. It's like, otherwise, what's the point? So it was there that I realized that I knew very little about Kuwait's history. When asked questions by my thesis professor, I was trying to tackle global topics and concepts, globalization, economics, etc. I was really driven by political science. I was realizing more and more that I wanted to be a political artist in some shape or form. But I was taking on challenges when I didn't even know what Kuwait was. And so that also helped me to look into what Kuwait was through history books, through archives, and then that's when I started reading more in Arabic and trying to understand, the different perspectives on what are the narratives that are being portrayed on and around Kuwait and by whom. So obviously a lot of our history is documented by the British. This creates a sort of one-sided perception on who we were and what we ended up becoming. And also made me realize that a lot of the institutions that are here in Kuwait are actually appropriations of that colonial system. And so that dependency is what drove me towards focusing on this as my art practice. But it also includes nostalgia a lot as well. So the idea of why do we look at the past and think, well, the good old days, especially in Kuwait in the 60s and 70s, it's like, oh, those days were amazing. Look at Kuwait now. So we're like always questioning, like, who was it amazing for? And in the 80s, who was that amazing for? For a lot of people, especially during the Islamic Revolution, for a lot of people, that was the golden era, And then today, you'll see a lot of people say, no, now is the golden era. Look at us, we're living, a great life. Or on the contrary, who knows? So that's what then became the thing where I'd be like, what are the questions I'm supposed to ask? I'm not an artist that's going to create solutions. I'm not a sociologist. I'm not a, cultural sociologist either. I'm not an anthropologist, but I am an artist, and we tend to want to mirror what we see and how we see things, especially in our surroundings. So it's like, well, if this was a great era, it was not achievable. And so why was it not achievable? And these are the questions that I raise through my work often. And yeah, basically, I think, yeah.
Okay. Please tell us about the Chicken Nugget Alliance. I know you spoke a little bit about it, but if you could just briefly speak a little bit.
Sure. So the project, it was part of a residency, and we're looking at, landscapes expanded. And at the time it was 2012, and there were the upcoming elections, the parliamentary elections. Bear in mind, at that time, women couldn't run for parliament, I believe. So it was supposed to be a satiric parody where me, this chicken nugget artist is starting this political campaign under the emblem of like a roast chicken with the title, the Chicken Nugget Alliance, creating media posters and starting a Facebook group, where we had like over 130 members all sitting and, making satirical jokes on different policies, whether it's, economical or sustainable, like we had the green group, we had, and people would just sit and, make memes out of this situation. I also created a campaign video, and this campaign video basically also shows that even though we're Western educated, that's what the definition of chicken nugget is. It's like, okay, you're Western educated, therefore you have this sense of elitism that you're better, you know, better. You'd probably rule the country better, and that's a misconception because there's also a lot of superficiality that comes with that type of pedagogy, and you know, we need to come clean about it and admit it. Is that just because we studied abroad doesn't mean we know any better for anyone, you know? And so that was the point. But I think a lot of people were really confused because I think it went viral or something, or somebody shared a video or shared the posters or something. And people were like, is she insane? Is she actually thinking about running? And the thing is that I wasn't even of age and didn't even realize that you need to be 31 to run for parliament. But there were things that were worthy of exposing, like is an elementary degree or a high school degree sufficient for you to be a parliamentary member? Or is that fine because we live through this very tribal culture also of like, well, we seek respect not through education, but through, you know, experience, wisdom, etc. But then again, it's like, well, then anyone can run and anyone can win, and it kind of defeats the purpose a little bit. But then it's also extremely democratic in that sense. So it's like raising these questions around all of that, and then the idea of a woman running for parliament, you know? So that's basically the project in a nutshell.
That's actually very interesting. What specific themes or symbols do you often explore in your artwork?
Definitely colonialism or imperial accounts. I delve into the British archives a lot. I use the digital library always to look at, you know, telegrams between colonial agents and any kind of ruler or at the time, you know, seeing the dynamics of the different regional countries like Kuwait's neighbors, you know, through the eyes of Dixon, who was the political agent here at the time, the idea of documentation or Kuwait's documentation through the eyes of Violet Dixon, through the flora and fauna, or whether it's, you know, her writings. And then it's this idea of also cross-cultural, like cross-cultural dressing or like, you know, appropriation, institutional appropriation, bureaucracy, you know, there's like even the military, to the point where even I looked into the military to see and understand whether these are actually our traditions or whether they were prescribed. And so most of the time what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to debunk what we're usually taught, or rather I'd like to say that we're not taught. And raise questions around that and be like, you know, why are we not aware of this? And how do we come out of this? How do we decolonize? How do we create our own sort of understanding of what identity is? Do we come to terms with the fact that we as Kuwaitis, for example, are a culture of paved, that we are hodgepodge, that because of our cosmopolitan, metropolitan kind of society pre-oil, does that mean that we are a culture of appropriation? And should we come to terms with that, you know? And if so, what should we and should we not appropriate at the same time?
Okay. How has Kuwait's artistic sphere evolved over the years? Do you find it challenging when you began your journey as an artist after returning to Kuwait?
Yeah, I mean, we have like 2 galleries now. I think they've come down. I don't know. I haven't heard anything from the rest in a while, but like consistent galleries, it's like, or like professional galleries are hard to find here, and we don't have that sort of platform for artists. So a lot of us tend to, you know, ad hoc it or grassroots it, and a lot of us strive for international attention because that's the only place where we can kind of have, you know, so a moment of light shining on the work that we create. But I do think that in most societies, the art scene is either it moves in between two things. It either moves into the realm of entertainment, where people just go to an exhibition because it's like a place to be seen, and it's like, oh, I'm so cool, I go to art exhibitions. Or it's like the very small, very few group of people that are actually really interested in what artists are doing, or want to do peer reviews, or sort of want to be inspired by what they see. Then you have the collectors, right? So the ones that just want to go and collect, and they see some kind of monetary value in what you're doing, or they want to support you in some shape or form. This is very weak in Kuwait. Like you don't have that sort of, like you don't have a really strong ecosystem for artistic development here. But what I like about it also at the same time is that it's not state run, which means like there was a moment where, you know, a lot of people were saying, oh, look at Saudi, look at the Emirates, look at, you know, Qatar, they're state funding everything. They're creating museums, they're opening galleries, and there's these opportunities for all of these artists. What's Kuwait doing? You know, Kuwait's not doing anything. And I'm like, yeah, sure, but there's a beauty to that and a freedom to that in terms of like being able to showcase whatever it is that you want without this idea of national propaganda or being part of a propaganda machine. So that's something that I think is the pro of having of the art sphere here, albeit very, very, very small.
I was just about to ask you about, and you answered it already, about the scene in places like Saudi, Dubai. You think it's better in ways, or
I think it's great that whatever they're doing is they're doing it, you know, and a lot of the people in their countries are benefiting from it. But I also don't think it shouldn't be a criteria for all states to pursue sort of the same structure or ecosystem. And I think we can learn a lot from each other. It's like, well, in Kuwait, you know, they have the grassroots, so they can say whatever the hell they want. No one censors them. And if they do, it's sort of like a wishy-washy thing, and they get a lot of criticism for censorship. Whereas there, it's like, well, you can't present this without our consent, you know? So there's like this idea of working against the grain versus working with the grain that artists are challenged with. And it doesn't mean that, you know, I don't have opportunities in Saudi or the Emirates or Qatar. On the contrary, I've been invited to all three countries and have participated in exhibitions there. And it's this cultural exchange, right? It's just that the only difference is that there's no spaces here in Kuwait for that exchange to happen the other way around.
Okay. How do you perceive the role of art in sparking dialogue and introspection within society?
Well, I think, you know, I don't know, but, you know, there's types of art. So I can only speak of myself, but I think that because of my topics and the general, like, amount spent, you know, whoever knows of me here in Kuwait and understands my work would be like, I wonder what she's going to talk about now. Because I've been seeing on my stories that I've been like posting a hell lot of military men and performances and stuff. And they're like, what is she gonna show? You know, what is she talking about? What is the premise of this entire exhibition? What is she trying to say? Why did it take her 5 years to come to terms with this, you know? And so it's like, I'm a slow artist, so I won't do exhibitions like every 2 years or every year, you know? Whereas, you know, you have painters who can, because it's like more of a skill-based practice where they generate work and ultimately curate the work. For me, it's like the opposite. For me, it's like I have to read so much and go to YouTube wormholes and like, you know, recover and maybe do something on the side just to kind of distance myself and come back to it. It's almost like mini theses, my work, you know? And so I think a lot of people are what they can learn from my work is like, well, I wonder what she's going to ask today, or I wonder what she's uncovered today. Because a lot of the times it's like, guys, did you know this? That's what my work kind of feels like. It's like, did you know that this happened in the year, this, you know? And it's like, I didn't know, did you know? You know, and I could expose it, talk about it, bring it to the surface and have that discussion around it, you know? Sometimes it's hit or miss because, you know, you have all of this information and then how do you translate that visually, right? How can you be clever about it? And so that's the point of a practice. It's like sometimes you fail, sometimes you succeed. As long as you keep trying to, you know, articulate yourself visually, then you start to develop a language, and that language is something that I'm still trying to grasp.
Great. What challenges do you face in conveying historical elements in your work with today's context?
With which context?
Today's context.
Today's context. Yeah. I think the challenge is to see or to try to make a connection whether the past actually influences the present. And if so, how does it do that? And so it's like a lot of the times I like to bring in past and present and future prospects into the work. So I always try to like the future becomes the question mark almost. And the present is intermingled with past relics or like ideas or facts or time markers. And so it's like, oh, this is what we like. If we're going to talk about one particular topic, this is who we were, and this is what we've become. What could have been the things that led to this situation, you know? So one of the films that I did, which is like 100 Soldiers Somersaulting, was a 45-minute film where I used archival footage from 45 years ago up to now. And so each, like almost like minute by minute by minute by minute, historical trajectory of Kuwait with some little subtle interruptions in between, which is where I'm asking the question through other archival footage. You know, it's like very random, sometimes funny, and then it suddenly switches to a really sad scene or like a really upsetting scene, like the Gulf War or like the the terrorist attack that happened. And then it's like also mixed with like, funny pop cultural stuff that we've generated. And that then brings everything holistically together to start to see, like, can we still connect the dots or not, And it leaves people food for thought to do it themselves. But it's again, I'm not in the position to kind of like contextualize. I can contextualize, but not define what our history is.
Okay. Please tell us about your artworks, frenemies, and desperate measures. How well were they received?
So frenemies, interestingly, the concept of frenemies is that, again, using the political agents' telegrams at the time, seeing conversations between the political agents of Kuwait, Bahrain, Saudi, and then the rulers of each sheikhdom at the time as well, between Sheikh Salim, King Ibn Saud, and yeah, so they basically document everything that leads up to the Battle of Jahra in Kuwait in 1920. And before that, there were also obviously territorial disputes. There was also a Zealot tribe called the Ikhwan who were like on the offensive in Kuwait. And there was a lot of, it was sort of a moment of minor instability because it was also the downfall of the Ottomans. So this was before Kuwait's borders were drawn up, and obviously all leads up to that in 1922. And the Battle of Jahra was in 1920. And I was like, this is insane. Reading their letters back and forth, seeing how the British talk about us, and talk about our rulers and talk about this land as though it's like a cake they could carve, It's like, how do I best illustrate this? And so I created a WhatsApp group conversation where all these participants were, chatting and would submit some documents or like leaflets that I could find that were from these documents to try to legitimize it. A lot of the conversations were actually quote unquote, but I decided to not quote them so that people don't know what is actually real being said or verbatim, or whether, it's my words that I've summarized from these texts, with these emojis and stuff. That one I presented in the French embassy because it was part of like a cartographic workshop there. And it was funny to like, kind of make fun of the British in the French Institute, So it's like, because I do bring in the map of Sykes-Picot and I show that, that it was a part of the British and the French, and, it doesn't make you French people exempt of these shenanigans. So that was very well received, especially by a lot of the African representatives of the embassies that came to visit, because like a lot of African states are still somewhat colonized by the French. And they were there and they were like, this is really funny, and they were getting it, and the people who did attend, because it's like, again, it's an interesting place. It's not very, very public. It's like the people of the French Institute that come. So they were also like really shocked. They just didn't understand if this was real or not. And then with Desperate Measures is basically one of my more personal works. So usually I remove myself from my work, but with this one, I did do a performance piece. And it's basically during the Gulf War, I was quite young at the time, but I do have a visual memory of my family in the kitchen, stitching gas masks, like DIY gas masks, out of cloth, charcoal. And so I asked my mom to write the instructions for me. And I tried to do a performance piece where I follow her instruction in order to create this, DIY gas mask that the Kuwaiti resistance at the time were trying to disseminate and trying to help people to make because of the fears of a chemical attack. And so then I just realized that, at the end of it, it's like, what's the point of this? Like, it's not going to work, you're obviously going to die regardless, So it became this concept of desperate measures. And, only if God willed, do you survive this or not? But it's like this idea of memory and trauma, not necessarily my trauma, but this idea of trauma that is this PTSD across Kuwait that a lot of people are in denial of, specifically those that were here during the Gulf War.
Yeah. Kuwait is a conservative society. There are certain strict do's and don'ts one has to follow. Do you find the strictures limiting?
Yeah, they are limiting, but I think to have limitations, it's great because then you have borders to work within. So as an artist, you know, you don't want to have this full reign and freedom of doing whatever it is that you want to do, because you might lose yourself in the abyss. So for me, it's like, I like the idea of being constricted. You know, I know this might be offensive to some people, so I won't do it. This might actually be too sensational, so I won't do it. This idea of being able to create work that respects the society that you're a part of, but at the same time challenges the status quo in a way where it's not detrimental towards any part of society. So on the contrary, I think these limitations are meant to be respected so that we can have the opportunity to engage with each other rather than fuel fights or, you know, further segregation and miscommunication.
Do you self-censor your work?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's self-censoring as much. Like there is a work that I did where I did self-censor myself, but it was because of the concept itself. Sometimes I do feel like I will self-censor because I feel like I shouldn't be talking about it anyway, you know, let the work speak for itself. And so there's always this moment of like, how literal does an artist want to be? You know, do I want to be very literal, or do I want to be a bit more, you know, conceptual, or do I want to have have my work be a platform for discourse and discussion? Like, what is it that I want to be? And so it's less than self censorship and more like saying, putting a hard yes or no towards specific directions. Like, this is not going to work. No, don't do it. It's like almost a guiding point.
Okay. You've shown your work outside Kuwait. What has the response been like?
Good. I mean, a lot of the exhibitions that I've shown, I haven't had the opportunity to go myself, whether it was in Canada or Berlin or, but I do get feedback back. So like either somebody will add a comment, just send me a message on Instagram being like, loved your drawings, or whether it's somebody who the curator would come to me and say, you know, like, a lot of people found your glass pieces extremely whimsical. So like I would get these responses from abroad, but it's ever since COVID, I haven't had the opportunity to do it. But I do have a couple of projects coming up soon, like that I'm curious to see what will happen, because these I will be present for. So it'll be more interactive with the audience. So fingers crossed.
Best of luck. I hope it goes well.
Thanks.
Yeah. And the last question, is it challenging for female artists to find a professional success in Kuwait? Has the situation changed over the years?
Success in art?
Yeah.
I think with any other profession, it's like, how serious do you want it, and how hard are you going to work for it? So the idea of being an artist requires a lot of self-discipline, like a lot. Like, you have to wake up in the morning and tell yourself, these are the hours I'm going to work today. Like, how many hours of the day I'm going to work versus today is a day off because I needed to contemplate and to sit and read, and, you know, so there's no 9 to 5, there's no punching in, punching out kind of thing. So who's going to be on top of you doing all of these things? And there's always, I feel like there's always this sense of, you need to, you know, there's the saying of like tortured artists, and it doesn't necessarily mean like tortured in the sense like, oh, woe is me, like the world is horrible. It's more like, you try, you fall, you try, you fall, you try, you fall. You send a few emails, you try to apply to grants, you try to apply to residencies, they reject you, they reject you, they reject you. And that's where it starts to filter out. It's like, who's serious and who's not serious, and who's willing to grow and who's not. And in the art world, there's a game. It's just whether you want to play it or not, you know? And you have to find out from the beginning, what type of artist do I want to be? And so I think I'm seeing personally more and more young female and male artists, you know, and I'm actually, on the contrary, would like to encourage more male artists, because it seems like it's even more embarrassing for men to pursue art, because it's looked at, and especially culturally here, as something very feminine, you know. And if you are an artist, you know, you should maybe pursue like calligraphy or something a bit more masculine, like sculpture, or, you know, why are you painting? You know, it's like such a girly thing to do. So it's like, the idea of it being gendered is, I have an issue with, because I think there's like a really important opportunity for both men and women to be creating works and to see and perceive Kuwait from these different perspectives. So I think there is a growth, and I think that social media is actually compensating for the lack of spaces in Kuwait. So you'll have a lot of artists that are coming out and they're doing really interesting new media works that, you know, even I'm like, you know, I really like this aesthetic, or, you know, the ideas behind it, very interesting, that are already packaging or pre-packaged themselves with an online presence. And so you don't need, you know, you don't need any artistic sphere that it's like grounded anymore to make contacts and network.
Perfect.
Or showcase your work also.